I'm downloading the MP3 right now.
Starting right now. What's up, guys? We are in the after show.
Welcome one, welcome all. You're watching Endpoint after no. It's so
Oh boy.
a lot of a lot of people just never got to like the full length of my Medium uh editorial, right? Where Tides of Transition talked a lot about BB10 and the legacy and how we're kind of moving on. But I think the opportunity here for me and for Berry Flow and everyone who's contributed at Berry Flow really is I look at people like Alex who don't use a BlackBerry anymore, are still impassioned about the brand, right? Still very interested in it as a business case study. But I have to acknowledge and admonish the fact that people like Alex and others in our Berry Flow group, gosh, Endpoint group, whatever we are, right? I think I have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of us have other interests, right? Like I don't want to pigeonhole myself to just be this BlackBerry guy who's just talking about BlackBerry all the time because it narrows my view of the world in a big sense, right? I can be impassioned about something but not ignorant to the rest of what's out there, and that's something I think that we all need to kind of temper ourselves with, right? It's look at what's new and what's out there and don't be ignorant of it because life will pass you by as you stare off into the corner, right? So obviously, like I don't want to have to just do tech stuff all the time. And Endpoint for me is just a fantastic outlet to allow myself to talk about other things, right? I think the Chick-fil-A story that I did as our first post on Endpoint is a really poignant look at our culture, really, right? And about the business of business. And I talk about Chick-fil-A in terms of, how they operate as a business and how the company culture focuses on people, and how my trip there was really eye-opening in the sense that the region around that original Chick-fil-A has changed dramatically, right? Where we had an American brand Ford company like right around the corner, right? Ford Motor Company, but ultimately that died off, right? The American brand died off. The BlackBerry brand died off, right? And outsourcing came in. Porsche came in, took over the Ford company, uh, basically a landscape there, and you see how Chick-fil-A just adapted, right? There's like, well, we have a new serviceable user, right? And I see so many businesses pivot and transition in that similar way. And just the fact that even at Chick-fil-A, right, they understand at the original Chick-fil-A that they have to serve beef, that they have to be flexible, right? That they have a wider company culture to acknowledge, but there's so much more going on in terms of the actual business and how that culture really lays a foundation for success for them. And I think we look at fast food and we look at a lot of the different industries that encompass our world, and there's a lot of things that I think are interesting and need a dialogue but don't necessarily get it. And that's where I want to spend my time with Endpoint. Crackberry Blaze has given me a fantastic opportunity to share my BlackBerry content to you guys directly. And I think there's no better place for it to be right now. I'd rather put my stuff where more people can see it, right, and hit a larger audience. And I think, again, with Berryflow in specific, it's again pigeonholed into that one thing, right? I don't want to compete with Blaze. I don't want to compete with Crackberry in terms of content because I think a lot of our stuff is complementary to one another. Especially, I'll do a video for something he wrote and it just works well, right? I may have done that video myself and thrown it up on the YouTube and basically avoided having to write the blog post, right? But Blaze already wrote the blog post, so it's kind of like a good synergy there where we can work together in that sense. So for Endpoint, I really BlackBerry put it perfectly in their little video, right? Endpoints are really starting points, and that's what I want to bring forward here. A lot of what we'll be doing at Endpoint is taking the feedback and the power that our community has enabled us through Patreon and really putting that into helping other content creators share their passions. And we think a lot of people are going to be able to enjoy the broader sense of what that is and what that's like. Because just as an example, right, Alex has a podcast that he wants to do and work on, right? And I don't want Alex to have to spend more time than he already does, right? He's already here maestroing this podcast and making and coordinating the stream. But if he has a passion about any given topic, right, be it business automation or, IT support or whatever he wants to talk about, he should have a platform where he can express himself without having to do all the laborious aspects of that, right? He doesn't want to have to work on the branding aspect or building out, a massive web infrastructure to support it or syndicate it and all that stuff, right? So Endpoint is a platform where Alex can kick me an MP3 that he's recorded, and I can go through, master the audio, add in the music, create the vibe, create the branding, and we collaborate in that sense to build the product. And that's really a lot of what Endpoint is doing. While you will see content from us that covers technology, reviews, culture, and lifestyle, that's absolutely going to be content that we generate. There's going to be a lot more on the back end that we help to really just help content creators get out there. We're working with Scott McCarthy from Blackberry Central to help him build right now a leadership podcast where he
I
talks
might
about,
even kick off my Doctor Who podcast on
Yes.
it.
and that is the beauty of Endpoint, because it is an open platform where there's no agenda that's really being driven. For me, the benefit I get from helping people and building and producing their content is that I get content at the end of the day, right? Where I can share, hey, I produce analysis paralysis, right? Or whatever Alex gets into, or I produce this and that. And upstream is really just now one tenet of that.
Yeah.
Whether long term, the Blackberry podcast is the Crackberry one or upstream, I think is irrelevant. I think everyone needs to understand that we're going to be here giving a consistent dialogue for Blackberry one way or another, right? Under one brand or another. The name is irrelevant. I think you're going to have us in our support to keep that dialogue going, and even more support, right, with Kevin coming back and supporting the brand and bringing in big players. The fact that John Chen put up a thank you, really, and a happy birthday to Crackberry's 10 years is amazing, right? That's stuff that, again, only Crackberry can do, because that's where the community is. That's why the Blackberry content is so much better served there than me or anyone else really kind of competing in that space. As a community, we band together, we get more done, right? We're better together. And I think John Chen said that before as well. So again, don't get confused between Berryflow and Endpoint or upstream and what's going on. I think you guys got to lock yourselves into Crackberry if you want that good Blackberry content, because that's where it's always going to be. It's been there for the last 10 years, and very likely it's going to be here for the next 10 years, right, in one form or another. And again, as we talked about in our previous show, there's going to be more and more stuff for Blaze and I to talk about coming ahead here in 2017 and the years to come. So again, lock into Crackberry for the Blackberry content. Berryflow to me is a monument to BB10, and that's it, right? BB10 isn't going anywhere, and neither is Berryflow. It is literally sitting there as an archive to what BB10 is and was, and all the effort and energies that we all poured into it. I don't want to take away from that in terms of what Endpoint's doing. What Endpoint really is the evolution of Berryflow into the next focus that we have, right? I don't want to just talk about tech my whole life, right? I want to have a deep introspective conversation with people about other things, right? Be it lifestyle, culture, technology to a degree, and other things. I think there's more that I can offer as a content creator than just Blackberry content.
Yeah,
but go ahead, Alex.
No, and I think we're definitely gonna have a little bit of a learning curve here to figure out, because yes, this is kind of going to be aggregated, but we do want to still allow people who, like, all I really care about is upstream. We do want a way for you to just view upstream and not be bombarded by a bunch of other things. So we're trying to figure this out as well, but we also want to be able to use this as kind of like a platform for people to get off the ground, and maybe we can get tons of, better content, aside from just technology. There's so many people on YouTube doing technology. There's just so many people that are just like, technology is that easy land grab of that's what we cover, but what about everything else? And we've learned so much through podcasting, through upstream, and you guys have helped us do that by supporting us. And we kind of realize, now that we know how to podcast and, we've been consistent for more than 2 years now, why don't we do something more? Why can't we go a little bit deeper? And it's not necessarily that you're going to be losing out on upstream. We have had many discussions that, maybe Crackberry would be a better avenue for the actual podcast, and maybe upstream, the after show side of it is what stays on Endpoint. There's a bunch of different ideas, and I think we're going to learn a lot through your feedback as well. So we may, send out surveys or something, or just ask for your feedback in general. If you're really hating the direction at certain times, let us know, because, we will genuinely take it into consideration for what we're trying to do. But
right, and just to play off of what James said, is that, like, if you are one of those people that is here specifically for the Blackberry content isn't necessarily going anywhere either, because like James said, you're just shifting some of the stuff over to Crackberry, and me being a part of Crackberry, I have no problem with that. Like Alex, if he ever wants to hop on a podcast with me to be able to go ahead and just talk BlackBerry, he's more than welcome to go ahead and do that. We can brand it the Crackberry Podcast. We can brand it the Berry Flow Upstream. We can brand it whatever. Same with James. Like anybody can go ahead and do that. And especially now that like, you know, the content is there. We're getting more content directly from BlackBerry to be able to go ahead and discuss these things. It's like I said, if you're here specifically for the BlackBerry stuff isn't going anywhere. So you may have to go to a different URL to find it in some cases, but it's still going to be there. And, you know, it's going to be there for the foreseeable future. And I'll do everything to make that happen in the most convenient way for everybody else along with that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one of the things I think that is critical here is that, you know, you have to acknowledge where you've been to understand where you're going. And, you know, I think back, as I did in that editorial, I thought back to, you know, where I was when BB10 launched and sitting there at the launch event. Like I'm sitting, and Blaze has been with me at launch events before. Like I literally am there to enjoy myself. Period. Point blank. like Blaze, JT, like everyone's there, like on their laptops, putting up posts, and I'm just like, this is awesome. You know, like I'm just totally about the experience of things because I feel like all knowledge is derived from a sense of experience, and that's what I want to continue to focus on. It's living my life and actually going out and doing things as opposed to sitting behind the laptop or sitting behind the lens and not actually, you know, really experiencing things and acknowledging where BerryFlow has grown to and the fact that, you know, we've been able to help the community kind of bridge that gap of the dialogue in terms of the BlackBerry news over the past couple of years. You know, I totally respect that. And as Blaze mentioned, whether it's under one banner or another banner, we're going to make sure that content's available to you guys. And, you know, bear with us with the endpoint transition and things like that, because we have a lot of cool things coming as we start building around what that focus looks like. A lot of the crew that we have on board from BerryFlow who's helping on the endpoint project is still waiting to see kind of how that content strategy looks, right? We've had some team meetings already about how to get around that and how that looks and how we can help individuals and bring things together. But we really have a lot of assets, and Mobile Nations has the same types of assets, right? Where they have people doing design, they have people working on the website, they have people who are doing the content creation, so on and so forth. And Endpoint's pretty similar in that sense, where we've got Marco who's working on graphics, right? We've got Dallin working on editorial content. Alex, as you know, is a web guru and has been working on the web mastering for the website. So I looked at our assets and I looked at, you know, what our skill sets were and what our passions were, and Endpoint is the end result of all of that. So definitely more things to come. And I literally may be publishing something here in just a short while on Endpoint for again, a different spin on things. So again, if you see stuff you don't like right now on the website, it's going to be a wide gambit of different things, and you'll be able to tune into exactly what you want, be it the BlackBerry stuff, be it the tech stuff, be it the review stuff, or more of the culture and lifestyle things to come ahead. So thank you guys for joining in the after show and allowing us to kind of do this dialogue here. I want to close out on some of the some other patron questions that we had. Some of them were pretty interesting, and we didn't get them in the main show, but I thought some of them were pretty interesting. There's like 19 comments this go around, and yeah, it's quite a few. Roger LeBlanc asks, not sure if my question is appropriate or not. The return of Kevin on Crackberry is somewhat unexpected. Some unconfirmed rumors state that Kevin is back because he's paid by TCL to promote the TCL brand. What do you guys think? Of course, I know he said he's back for the 10th anniversary, but it feels awkward nonetheless. Sean gave like the perfect response to this for us. He says the only awkward thing is overthinking it. And I think that's right on the nose, right? Crackberry's 10 years old. This is his baby. You know, you got to come back and champion that, period, point blank. The fact that the Mercury's kind of lined up with that, I think, is more a happenstance thing, right? I think it's like a thing that's meant to be rather than something that's, you know, pre-planned or pre-proposed.
Right. It's not like we planned it. We're going to launch the site 10 years and then BlackBerry Mobile is going to exist.
Exactly. You know, opportunity is one of those things that you create for yourself, right? It's not something that just, you know, happens. If it feels awkward, it's because it's genuine, right? It's the fact that we're coming around right now and are genuinely hyped about this thing, and it feels weird because we haven't been hyped in the last 5 years, right? That's why it feels awkward, if anything. We haven't seen this type of momentum, this type of launch feel in quite some time, right? We've seen devices and, we've gone to launch events, but we haven't seen something of this scale in quite some time. So, Cell Ninja, just keep up the good work on your BlackBerry apps, man. Keep the BlackBerry 10 apps rolling, and email Blazer Eye so we can post something about it, right? Another question here is, Canadianly speaking, the prices for the D-Tech series on Shop BlackBerry are still way out of touch for us up here. Our dollar is worthless to that of our U.S. counterparts, and that makes us, less overall. BlackBerry wants to really get their hands, get these devices out in the hands of the public. Canadian dollar notwithstanding, I think there's definitely some oddities between some of the pricing. Is the Canadian dollar that bad? Like, I don't think it is. I just feel like BlackBerry doesn't necessarily level the playing field in terms of the cost. And maybe that's something BB Mobile will kind of get right this time around.
I mean, it is when it comes to larger ticket items. I mean, smaller ticket stuff is like whatever, right? You can make up the difference on it, but when it comes to larger ticket items, you're gonna notice the difference in a big way because you're spending hundreds of dollars at that point. It is a fair argument to make, and the problem with that is that, like, it looks terrible from a BlackBerry perspective, but you also have to keep in mind that everybody else is plagued with these problems as well. The only difference that comes into play is that the other manufacturers of devices have the carriers to essentially rely on as well. But even the carriers, even if you go through your carrier, like, if you go through Rogers or Bell or Telus or anything like that, you're also going to get hit with the pricing, especially now that, like, the 3-year contract submission thing is gone. Like, we moved to 2-year contracts, but at the same time, 2-year contracts is great, and it's really beneficial to, like, Canadian users to be on the same level playing field as every other market, especially with the U.S. carriers. But at the same time, you also saw price increases when it comes to those devices. Like, the iPhones all increased in price when they came out. New Android devices all increased in price when they come out. So you're paying more in the long run for it. It's just that you don't necessarily see it as much. So, I mean, there really is the only difference there is that, like, it's a big hit up front because you're not going through a carrier in Canada when you buy a BlackBerry device, and hopefully BlackBerry Mobile will be able to go ahead and swing that a bit and get these devices back into carrier hands to be able to go ahead and at least get some subsidy off of the actual pricing so that it becomes, a little bit more reasonable. I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, you can't really blame BlackBerry for the dollar pricing on there. I mean, they still, at the end of the day, as a business, they still have to make money. The only thing that you could really, maybe hit on them for is the fact that they aren't in carriers to be able to go ahead and help get the pricing down somewhat. It's just one of those things. If the dollar improves, then the pricing will improve too. But for now, I mean, hopefully BlackBerry Mobile will get those devices back into carrier hands and carrier distribution to be able to go ahead and bring that cost down some. It's just one of them things, man. Like, I don't like buying stuff nowadays because of how crappy that the dollar is. Like, big ticket items, I've like my birthday is actually tomorrow. My mother asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I'm like, I don't want nothing because I don't want my mother to go spend money on any sort of, like, big ticket items. Like, why? Like, just wait for the dollar to fix itself and see if we can do something then.
Definitely. And that's something we've seen happen, right? TCL, Alcatel, they came back to form by getting those carrier relationships right and slowly building that back up, right, and building out that brand presence. And I expect the same thing to happen here. It's a good question, and I think it's a valid concern, right, especially because we've really only had those unlocked options available. So definitely a good question. I think, long term, they want to get these out to everyone, right? They want to make sure the masses have these devices available. And it's really cool because I think, as TCL mentioned and Steve mentioned in the Crackberry podcast, it's that, they still are taking some design cues from BlackBerry on this stuff, and Mercury may not be the last bit of, BlackBerry design influence that we see on these devices. So Passport, Priv, I think they're looking at that legacy and really finding how they can maximize things. Waldo42 asked, "Hey guys, I noticed that you have matched the BerryFlow name with the direction of BlackBerry and called it Endpoint. I watched the video that you put on BBMC. I just wonder if you could give a synopsis of this in a BlackBerry Direction for Dummies mode and talk a bit more about how you think this will affect the podcast, and tell us what you're excited about." Just excited about the opportunities that are available. I think for myself and all of the Endpoint crew, it's just a breath of fresh air for us to have an outlet where we don't have to try to figure out how to fit BlackBerry into the conversation, right? Like Matt, one of our writers, is all about wearables, but BlackBerry doesn't do much with wearables, right? So the conversation is like, well, wouldn't it be great if we got BlackBerry Blend on a watch, right? Like that's the conversation we try to force and try to have that dialogue, but Blend is EOL, right? Let alone any types of watch rumors and things like that. So it's really tough to kind of fit your passion into another passion, right? And get those two to be synergistic with one another. So BlackBerry Directions for Dummies, software, right? BlackBerry's direction, and I think the overall direction of the BB Mobile is two different questions. And the direction BlackBerry is going is really to cover and be that BlackBerry secure underpinning foundation to everything, right? Be it air traffic control systems, all the embedded intelligence that comes along with where they are with QNX. It's really where they're going to be long term. So BlackBerry, the company's direction, is prevailingly one of software. And Blaze and I are going to be there, right? Making sure we cover it for you guys, as boring or exciting as it may be, right? It's funny because like the BBM SDK got like very little traction, right? Because people are like, who cares? I don't use BBM anyway. But then I put up the post about BBM spam invites, and everyone's like, yeah. just shows the dichotomy really of the users that are out there, and that there's a lot of different areas people are experiencing BlackBerry through. It could be through a consumer messaging app, could be through an enterprise messaging app right behind the firewall. So many different things there. Waldo42 also says, "I noticed at the buzz for the Crackberry 10 event in Barcelona, yet Blaze lives in Dartmouth or Halifax." I think it's Halifax, right?
Yeah, Halifax is basically the larger city. Dartmouth is like I don't know, it's like a community within Halifax.
Check the description. We're going to put Blaze's address there for you. Just kidding. I see the possibility of creating huge excitement here, like the earlier days of BlackBerry phone launches. What's going on for North America and Canada? We love partying too. And if you go back and listen to that last half hour of the Crackberry podcast from last week, because Kevin and Blaze were definitely talking about the opportunity of doing other meetups and things like that in other regions. And again, the momentum's there, right? I'd love to be able to meet up in like New York with you guys, or somewhere else too. I think that'd be dope.
Absolutely. I mean,
like I'd go to Toronto even, just to go and get out of Florida, man.
Yeah, and I mean that was pretty much. I mean, obviously, I want you to go back and listen to it so that you get the entirety of it. But Toronto and New York are two places that basically came up within the conversation to be able to go ahead and see what the possibilities of any sort of events were, because they're essentially the obvious spots. Like, obviously, you're going to go to Toronto. Obviously, you're going to go to New York, presuming that the rollout and all that stuff happens within North America. But we were also basically discussing, what may not necessarily be the obvious spots. To be able to go ahead and have a little get together for any of the launch events or anything like that. But like I said, just listen to the podcast. You'll get a better idea of what the thinking is behind it going forward, and hopefully we can make some of that happen, because right now nothing is set in stone, but it's definitely on the radar to be able to go ahead and party it up in different places.
Yep. Waldo's on a roll here, and we're gonna close out here quite shortly. The last question that we'll cover here is, should the Mercury only be for the BlackBerry faithful, or is there a way of developing market share for it? I think this device, the Mercury, from an aesthetic point of view, is a everybody type of device. It calls upon the nostalgia of the keyboard while being in the form factor of the high-end BlackBerry, SEs that we've seen previously, but also has a lot of aesthetics similar to like the iPhones and early like Samsung S5, 6, 7s that have been out there. So I think this is one of those devices that, while it immediately serves the BlackBerry faithful, the marketing and the way they're going to develop that is going to be for everybody. It's going to be, this is the return to form of what was best about the early BlackBerry devices, and how that now is modern and sleek and fast and reliable. So I definitely think Mercury is a device that, while speaks predominantly to the loyalists, it's going to also speak to the non-locals as well, right? Those people on other devices, an iPhone 6 that's finally full up on storage, and it's forcing them to update and maybe not running the same way. I think a lot of eyes are going to be looking back at BlackBerry with the launch of the Mercury and seeing, dang, BlackBerry's kind of got it all together now, right? I'm not missing apps. I'm not missing the software services. I'm not missing on the functionalities and features. Let me give it a try. And I think the marketing will expand from there, because we're all ex-BlackBerry users to a degree, right? Some of us current, some of us not. But I think almost every mobile user has touched with, played with, or used and owned a BlackBerry at some point. And I think harkening back to that with the Mercury is something that the marketing that TCL will do is definitely going to speak toward. So thanks for all the questions, guys. We definitely appreciate that. And again, we're going to keep them coming. I've literally ordered all of the international shirts for the Upstream Patreons as well. So those are going to be going out here before the end of the month. So lots of good things coming here to ahead. And again, keep it locked on Crackberry. You can subscribe directly for Mercury News on Crackberry and get it right to your inbox with all the latest goodies. So definitely do that. I've done it so that I don't have to like constantly refresh the CB app, right? It's way easier for me to get my news that way. So definitely go check that stuff out. And we will catch you guys next week. Sorry to be so long-winded this go around. I'm sure Alex has passed out by now.
Yeah, I'm ready for some dinner.
Preach. Anyway,
I'm sure people
take it easy.
In some certain scenarios appreciate the long-windedness anyways. With things being slow previously. Come on, we gotta get a lot to talk about. Get out.
Yeah. Our last podcast was called Brief, and this one's called Not So Brief, right? That's what I should have named it. So anyway, guys, always good to dialogue with y'all. More to come from us over at Crackberry, and definitely keep it locked there. Like, I'm so excited for some of the stuff we're going to get to be getting into here in short time. And if you're not all about the Mercury and you're really an old touch guy, there is the Shop Blackberry sale going on for the D-Tech devices for Valentine's Day. You got like a couple more days to kind of get in on that. So maybe you buy a loved one a D-Tech 50 and you buy yourself a Mercury. All right. Stay tuned.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Take care, everyone.